Hello again. Jared Case here, curator of film exhibitions at the Dryden Theater and the George Eastman Museum with another streaming recommendation. We've been going through American film history decade by decade, and we're up to the 1960s today with a little film called Once Upon a Time in the West, directed by Sergio Leone from 1968. And we played this film on a 35mm print, of course, at the Dryden Theater last March in a little diptych dedicated to the musical composer Ennio Morricone. But the reason that I want to talk about this film today has more to do with the cinematic experience. I am often asked, as someone that shows films for a living, what my favorite films are, or what my favorite film of all time is. And I tend to defer my answer to instead talk about my favorite cinematic experiences, because that's really what lives on in my memory more than the films themselves, are that specific combination of the film, the place, the time, the people I was with. Those are the memories that last for a very, very long time for me. And although I didn't see Once Upon a Time in the West for the first time in a theater, I do remember specifically, I can almost point out the seat that I was sitting in the first time that I saw Once Upon a Time in the West on the big screen. And it was at the Dryden Theater. This was before I was working at the George Eastman Museum, and I was just getting to know the theater and the museum as a patron. And it was simply an overwhelming experience. It was something that I had seen before, as I say, but it was seeing it on the big screen, having that immediate and that immersive and that communal experience of watching this wonderful print of this wonderful film with a wonderful audience that has really stayed with me for all of these years, so 25 years or something down the line. And this is something that we tried to give you at the Dryden Theater, is this experience, particularly with the Nitrate Picture Show, which, if you've been paying attention, unfortunately, we have had to postpone from this year to next year. So it will be going on June 3 through 6, 2021, and we won't have a festival this year, but it will still be the 6th Nitrate Picture Show coming up next year, and we hope that you will all be able to attend that. But as for this film, there are so many things to like about it. And it's interesting that I'm bringing this up on Saturday. Last Saturday, we had another Western, Stagecoach, that dealt with a lot of Western tropes and cliches that Ford then took and turned on their head. Leone does much the same thing 30 years later in his film. Of course, this is a much more epic feel. It's almost twice as long as Stagecoach is, and it's got, instead of having a single unifying piece of let's call it set with the Stagecoach, what we have are these multiple storylines that all intertwine with each other and come to a singular conclusion. He cast Henry Fonda, who had been in Westerns and certainly had this aura of the righteous as the bad man in the film. So he's doing sort of this meta casting where you're taking someone that people know, that the audience knows, and you're turning that around. Charles Bronson, in an early role, is really the hero of the film, along with Jason Robards Jr. This is where I fell in love with Claudia Cardinale, and what Leone did in terms of shooting was he used a process called Techniscope. If I can get a little bit nerdy here, this is actually a process where, instead of using the full range of a normal film frame, where it's 4 perforations per frame and you are advancing 4 perforations at a time, with Techniscope, you're only advancing 2 perforations at a time. So not only are you using less film, which means you get more film to use, but it also creates this widescreen look immediately, and using spherical lenses instead of the lenses that compress the image to make it look like a normal CinemaScope film. So the challenge, or the benefits of this, it offsets. The picture quality is not as high, but using the spherical lenses, you can, with much less effort, get this deep focus that Leone uses for many of his shots, particularly the outdoor shots. And again, he's using Monument Valley the same way Ford did 30 years earlier for Stagecoach. But he can also get these wonderful close-up shots, and as he focuses in on Henry Fonda's eyes or Charles Bronson's eyes, the acting is all in the eyes. So many of them say so little. And much of the mood of the piece is carried by their physical acting, as well as that Ennio Morricone score, which features leitmotifs that are written for specific actors and their characters, so that you can have that carry through. You can even, without them being on screen, know that they're present because that score plays in the background. Leone liked to have, particularly on this film, he wanted to have the score written ahead of time to play on set as these actors were doing their lines. And of course, being shot in Italy, many of these films were overdubbed. So they were shot with people talking, but the dialogue was actually added in later. So it's somewhat of a complex process to make things cheaper. More steps, but less money. Anyway, one of probably my favorite Western of all time, from 1968, is Once Upon a Time in the West. If you've got 2 hours and 45 minutes, it's well worth your investment, and hopefully I'll have another chance to bring it back to the Dryden Theater, and then we can all watch it and have that same experience in the theater together. Now streaming on Amazon Prime and on Netflix, just went on Netflix. Please check it out and come back tomorrow for another recommendation. Thanks.